source units, head units, infotainment units, control units. All these different things are used to describe the same thing. Ultimately, they all have to provide the most important factor. What we're really looking for is to have a source unit to produce great sound quality. Yes, we all know they have phenomenal looking screens and interactive GUIs. If the machine has a great look and it sounds like garbage, it helps for nothing. When you're in your vehicle and you're driving along, the most important thing is to be able to ensure that the music that you've put into your machine through FLAC or whichever is going to be produced in the best way possible. The signal that comes out of it is the absolute critical. And that's what we're going to talk about and demonstrate today. But if your source units are not up to speed, it's going to start distorting. And in fact, the better the speaker and tweeters and amplifier you have, the better job it's going to do of amplifying the distortion. But here's the real problem, which means all my super highs are not being amplified. But if you're starting with an aftermarket source unit, what you don't want is a compromise signal. It means if you fed this into an amplifier with some awesome tweeters, well, guess what? You're not going to hear them because you use the speaker leads. It should fire up and it'll come up with, in this case, a Toyota logo. There you go. If you didn't have an amplifier with a crossover, very cool to have. The message from this video is that you've got a clean RCA output of decent voltage, 100% linearity on pink noise, and you've got the front and rear fadeability plus a separate sub-level control, which, you know, like I said, on the speaker leads you won't have, which is fantastic. The price points are great, the quality is good, and it's got automotive distributors back up. Hey, we're back again. Another rainy day up in Hilton, but we're in the tech room this time, and we are going to be launching our new smart multimedia source units. Now, being automotive, we represent premium brands. So this particular unit was developed in partnership with a company that has been working on source units for a long time. It's always been about getting the best possible source. Now, we still are firm believers that if you have a factory radio, use it, rather integrate a DSP or integrate with CAN bus. But if you're in a situation where you don't have a premium source unit, do not make the mistake of putting in something that's aftermarket that's going to make you go backwards. And we're not talking about the functionality of it or how the map works or how the product looks. It's more about what comes out of it from an audio perspective. Smart Multimedia has put together this unit. It's the premium version. It's a 9-inch, and we can have them made available to whichever vehicle. In this case, it's a Land Cruiser. You can buy it on its own, but if you order it, we're going to make it available as part of our stage kits. So if you order it with a Land Cruiser, if it's going to be wired to normal speakers with no amplification, it'll come with a basic harness which will plug into the vehicle and it'll connect to the speakers. Doesn't matter what car you've got. So you get the trim, you get the harness, and you get your microphone for your cell phone. You've also got your navigation antenna, and you've also got multiple channel RCA out. And a lot of the units we've tested only have a very small voltage. They have about 0.3, which is 300 millivolts. Now, just to understand that in a simple term, 1 volt is, I mean, if you think about it, your USB provides 5 volt DC. 1 volt is the tiniest amount of voltage that you're trying to amplify with. So a lot of people, what they do is they use the speaker leads. And the speaker leads, you can amplify from those, but you got to remember the speaker lead will have compromises. There will be distortion, potentially. Obviously, you don't have the functionality of control, which is a big problem. The other biggest concern, which a lot of people overlook, is the output, the unit, besides voltage, is you also need to have what's called a flat response. Now, a flat response is measured with a real-time analyzer. It's a pink noise is what we use. Pink noise is basically all frequencies across the spectrum from 20 to 20, and we measure in 1/3 increments, which is the standard, and they've all got to be equal, because if you had some frequencies that were up and some frequencies that were down, there's the real-time analyzer. This is our trusty old 3055, and I'm going to demonstrate to you now when we put pink noise on that it should be a flat line. We'll also show you how the crossovers work and how the effect of those crossovers are, which is also important, because a lot of the time people sell you a head unit, but they haven't actually established whether the signal is a true source flat response. Because if it's inadequate, or if it can't take a load, you're going to now try and amplify that, and inadvertently you're going to end up with a compromised signal. A lot of factory radios have that because they have a DSP built in there, and that's when you've got to start dealing with that. But if you're starting with an aftermarket source unit, what you don't want is a compromised signal. So with no further ado, we're going to start by switching this thing on, and you'll see when these units are prepared, they're prepared for your vehicle. We have the factory logo coming up, so we'll turn it off, and we will turn it back on again, and you'll see it should fire up, and it'll come up with, in this case, a Toyota logo. There you go. So we've got the Toyota logo appearing there. If it was a Ford so it gives you that factory feel. So yeah, these units, all of them, they're very thin. I mean, these things are essentially designed to fit into your dash. This one has a built-in fan. A lot of them have a little fan that's plugged in on the outside. This one is a proper bolted on fan, so it has a microprocessor, which is essentially the brains of it. And if that device runs hot, the functionality of it becomes compromised. These things all have obviously CarPlay and Android Auto and CarPlay, which means there's a lot of processing going on with mapping and audio, and it's got to run cool. So this little guy is a little computer, so it runs cool. So what we're going to do on our first test is we're going to run the pink noise. I'm going to have Dinesh come in here and play the track, and we're going to show you that this thing has not only 6 RCAs out, front, rear, and sub, but it also has the ability to produce decent voltage. I think it's close to 0.9 of a volt, which is pretty damn good. We've tested other brands at like 0.3, 0.4. And with the signal being low, you're going to end up with a lot of noise in the signal, which means, think about it, if your signal coming in to your cable from the head unit, or from the source unit, whichever way you want to call it, to the amplifier running all the way through the car is very low, there's a good possibility, well, in fact, it's almost guaranteed, you're going to have other interferences compromising the music quality. So then people start using the speaker leads. But like I said earlier, those are going to necessitate distortion and other compromises with the audio signal. So first goal, good signal quality. Second goal, obviously, good voltage. So let's see if we can get both. So here you can see we got the RTA running. I've got it on medium, and it's on a 1/3 incrementation. And I'm going to put it down to slow. And we've got a cable running down, and we're going from the, what channels is it? The front audio out. I think it's the rear.
That's the rear.
Rear, yeah. And that's pretty damn flat. I mean, that's insane. So you'll get a little bit of differentiation because of maybe the wiring down there, but that is 100% perfect response curve. If I go into the menu, I can go and select, obviously here we've got our rear, our front, we've even got a center channel. It's basically a phantom. It takes what's common to left and right, and it gives us a center image. So you've even got polarity for each speaker. So I can change the polarity, not the phase, the polarity 180 degrees for each speaker, which is great. So if I wanted to use a phase detector, which we sell, and Audiomotive distributes all these test tools, you can go and double check to make sure your polarity is correct, front or back. You've also got another cool feature here, which is your bass filter. Now what the bass filter does, this enables you to limit the frequencies that go to the front speakers. Now at this point you'll see the front is completely running at full range, and so is the rear. If you look at the RTA, I'm going to now change. I'm going to go up to, say, 80 Hertz. It's now crossing over at 80 Hertz. And it'll measure at the 3 dB down point. That's typically where your crossover comes in. And if you can tell, it's saying 80 Hertz at the 3 dB down point. That's pretty damn accurate. It's a 12 dB per octave slope. So if I, for example, had an amplifier that didn't have a crossover, I could use these. Most often, we don't recommend using this, purely because if you used that only without an amplifier and somebody got into this menu, that's the one downside of it. If somebody got in and fiddled with this, they would end up potentially running low frequencies into a 6-inch or a 5-inch or a 4-inch speaker and inadvertently damaging it mechanically. So we're not really a fan of this, but if you didn't have an amplifier with a crossover, very cool to have. You could run them together by using the RTA. You could see what the curve is and then map the same crossover point on the amplifier, which means you'll get a 24 dB per octave slope. Very good to have extra protection, and you can handle more power. You've also got a bass boost, and what's nice about this is that if I wanted to see what it's boosting, it'll tell me on the RTA what I'm actually boosting, and in this case it's giving me a bass boost in the low ranges, which is fair enough to say. The problem is I don't necessarily want to boost mid-bass, but if I did want to, I could then use the crossover, obviously limit how much was coming through. What's nice about this as well, you've also got time delay circuit, which is very cool. Time delay circuit, so there's the listener in the middle, it's representing it, that's all people, okay? So say you're driving along the road and your wife wants to listen to it, or your husband, depending on who's the driver, decides to listen to it. You can push co-pilot mode. Now, co-pilot mode means that the delays have been corrected so that the positioning is now focused towards the passenger. Or in the case of most people, it'll be the driver. Or if there were lots of people in the car and you said you wanted to listen to everybody, then you could go full, which essentially means the speakers are producing the sound based on how you've set them. So the back normally would be about 6 to 3 dB softer. You've also got the time delays here. So if I move this down, I can create delays. It's using a nice little graphic here showing me that it's pushing the speakers away from me. What it's doing is it's creating a longer time distance from the listener to the front, which means it's creating the illusion of more space. I can also delay left and right in the front, which is great because it means that I'm emulating, because I'd like to delay the right front speaker to that it would appear to be, and what that'll do, it'll create more of an image from the center channel. It'll combine both left and right, which is quite nice. So you've got this very clever feature enabling you to do it. And you can set it up. The only sad part is I wish it could be locked out. So you set it up and leave it, because the problem is you could spend hours setting it up and then somebody can come along and fiddle with it. But that's the only problem that I find with this, unfortunately. But it is the premium unit, so it's intended for premium, consumers the discerning listener, rather than someone who just wouldn't want to have it as it was. They want to get the best out of it. And this is obviously a very nice feature. It's almost like fine-tuning, you were to plug a vehicle and then map it to get the maximum out of it. This is what this does. You've also got other features like in the back. So if you had maybe TVs running, you could have passenger in the back, passenger left in the center, and passenger on the left. So that could also create, so maybe you got people in the back and people in the front want to have a conversation. It would enable you to compromise. So it would mean that the staging would now move towards the back of the car as opposed to the front of the car. So it changes the delays, not the volume, it changes the delays. The volume is obviously a separate entity, which is, like I showed you earlier, is the zoning, which is now the levels. This is your levels. So if you put it at the level, to the back, then you went on to the surround, you would then go passenger mode 1 or 2, and then what will happen is you get a delay, and it would make the back people believe, or closely believe, that they're now in the front. And as you can see, those speakers, although they physically don't move, but it creates a delay, which means the front doesn't become the dominant source of signal. A full equalizer, very cool, but also very dangerous. This is quite an established equalizer. I mean, you've got, virtually covering the entire bandwidth. Now, normally you get single octave equalizers and half octave and 1/3 octave. In this case, you've got a full 1/3 octave equalization from 18K. The spectrum runs from 20 to 20. Let's run this on the RTA here for a second. Let's get this up. So there I've dropped down the 1.2K. And as you can tell, I'm sure you can pick it up on the camera, 1.2K is dropped. That's pretty damn accurate. Now, you'll very seldom find source units with this accuracy. This is where we really were impressed with this because of the audio element of it. So if we had a fault in a vehicle or some kind of reflection from glass, and you had this annoying sound that you're trying to get rid of, this has got the ability to actually deal with it. Really, really cool, which is fantastic. And but also knowing you'd have to go to an expert. So I'm saying buying these units, you don't want to just go and buy them from an online retailer. You want to go into an expert store. Audiomotive has trained dealers, and they'll be able to set this up to make your amplified and subwoofer system sound fantastic. So this is the low frequency range and mid bass. So for example, if I wanted to pull that down now because there's a bit of a boost, and I go to 40 hertz. I'll pull 40 hertz down, give it a few seconds. This is on the 20-second sampling, sorry, 10-second sampling. So it'll take 10 seconds to respond. There it is, it's responding. And all of a sudden, you'll see that going straight the way down. It's pretty effective. There's the 40 hertz going down, which is amazing. And that is super accurate. I mean, and that's obviously at a minus 12 dB. So if I count the LEDs, there'll be 4 drops, which is 12 dB. It's exactly it, because each dot represents 3 dBs. That's why I said it's on a 3 dB setting. It's 3 dB per step. If I changed it to a 4 dB, it means that each LED would represent 4 dB. But most things are in the industry are measuring at 3 dB per step. I can go up to 1 dB per step as well, which is super fine. Radio, your Bluetooth, you got your navigation. Now, the navigation obviously has the ability to function on its own with its own built-in mapping. You can update it because it has Wi-Fi as well, so you can update it to Wi-Fi. You can also install your phone, wireless Auto Android, and wireless CarPlay. And the speed of that is quite remarkable. It comes with the antenna, and it's got the microphone. The apps that it comes with, there's bunches of them. Obviously, you can download these apps and you can go through it. It's very intuitive. I mean, it's got obviously your mapping, your colors, your DSP file manager. I mean, it's really impressive for a unit. And the price point on this thing is very competitive. I mean, I've seen units in the 20-30 grand range. And this thing is, you know, going to give them a good run for their money. So let's just look at the actual voltage now from this radio. How much we're getting and how clean the output is. Because remember, if the output was distorted at full volume, whatever you amplify would become pointless. Because now you're going to be amplifying that distortion. And distortion is what people obviously would not want in their systems, because it would destroy their speakers, it sounds terrible, it burns tweeters, and it all starts from the source. So you could have the best amplifiers, the best speakers, the best wiring. You could have spent thousands and thousands on sound deadening and installation quality, but if your source units are not up to speed, it's going to start distorting. And in fact, the better the speaker and tweeters and amplifier you have, the better job it's going to do of amplifying the distortion. You know, and I did it on a previous video where I discussed that and referred to what distortion actually is and what happens in the sine wave, and it ends up creating heat and burning tweeters and so forth. And a lot of people don't tell you that. They just say, here's your radio, it's fantastic, it's got all these features, but like I said, is what comes out of it. And what's coming out of it is the audio signal that is the most important. So all these features are great, but knowing how to use them and knowing that it's clean is important. Okay, so let's get this thing set up. Okay, D, if we can come and wire up the output. I want to run a 1K tone at 0 dB, which is the center frequency that we use for the high from the middle of the upper frequency range, and then we're going to run a 40 hertz tone at full volume at 0 dB, which is the loudest recorded voltage you can get to test it. And we'll measure the voltage and actually see what it does on the RCA and also on the speaker leads, and we'll then confirm the distortion. Okay. Okay, so we got a little test going on here. As you saw earlier, we have an RCA cable connected to the line out. We're going to show you how much voltage comes out of that in a bit. For now, before I do that, I just want to show you how important it is to use the preamp circuit, which, as I said, has to have as much voltage as possible over the speaker leads. Now, the speaker lead wire is this cable here, and as you can see, it's connected to the speaker lead output, which is right there. We've tapped it into the plug. We're going to look at the RTA machine, which is from 20 to 20, and it's currently set up at flat response. There's no boosting, no crossovers being brought in. The equalizer is 100% flat, and as you can see, it is pretty much flat. When we've got a little bit of roll off here, this will settle down now. That I know is pretty flat. It's a linear curve. I'm now going to switch it and unplug this. Okay, I'm going to put it on fast sampling, and I'm going to plug in the speaker lead. Okay, I'm going to turn that obviously down a bit because it's more power, and I'm going to sample it again. And what I immediately notice is on the end, on the high side, it's got a roll off. The low side is okay, but the biggest problem I'm noticing is I've got a drop off on the highs, which means that the amplifier output on the circuit, and in fact the low is also less consistent. You can see there's definitely not the same linearity that I had with the RCA output. But here's the real problem, which means all my super highs are not being amplified. So which means if you fed this into an amplifier with some awesome tweeters, well, guess what? You're not going to hear them because you use the speaker leads. And a lot of companies are doing that with their head units. And this is a good one, so I'd hate to know what it's like on the, the ones that claim they're so great. Because there's a compromise. There's the living proof. This is not smoke and mirrors. This is a test done in real time. You can see the low frequencies also just going all over the place. So that again tells you, and I haven't even turned it up. I guarantee you if I turn it up, it's going to start stressing it out even more. Bring it back to scale. Let's get the scale back on here. And I mean, I haven't rehearsed any of this. Honestly, this is just, I mean, there's no funny daddies. And yeah, the low frequencies aren't happy. They're definitely compromising it. So I'm killing all my bass. I've lost some of my bass here. So that's everything from, I think it's 40 hertz or 50 hertz down that's been compromised. The other thing that concerns me is the voltage. Now, if I go off the RTA and we switch it on to 1K, let's have a look and see how much power we get out of this. And then we'll see whether it's actually clean. So we're going to put it onto, this meter here is giving us the voltage, and then the scope on the left is going to show us the curve. And this is on the speaker lead output. And we'll show you we got 1K because I'm using the RTA to demonstrate that. As I said, 1K is the single frequency, which is 1,000 times a second. That's what the frequency measures in hertz. So it's essentially a sine wave that is going on and off 1,000 times a second. Yeah, if I now go and turn up the head unit's on full, correct, at the moment. There it is, full. We've got 10 volts. Now 10 volts into a 4 ohm speaker, so 10 times 10 divided by 4, it's 25 watts, which is not bad. But as you can tell, if I look on that screen, it's showing you that it's square waving. We're going to put it onto the bigger oscilloscope and we'll see how that looks. But I can tell on that small handheld scope, which is called a TPI, which is a nice device for working in cars. But if you look at it on the bigger screen, you'll see the square wave is apparent. Okay, Dinesh is setting it up. Okay, just drop your input signal. There you go. A very clear square wave. Now, someone's going to turn that up in their car, and they're getting a clip signal, which is going to, unfortunately, create distortion. And that's going to be amplified further up to as much as, I don't know, 50, 60 volts coming out of an amp, depending on how much amplification you want. And with Rockford amps, I mean, you know, you get your money's worth. You get more power than what's advertised. If I turn the volume down now, turning it down, okay, it's 29, 28, 26, 27. So 26 or 27 is where it gets clean. Now, nobody will go and say, well, don't turn your volume up past 26. People, you know, want to turn it to full. And the problem is, if you incorrectly set the level matching of your system incorrectly, you will unfortunately end up with that signal even getting worse. So that's one of the issues. We'll try it on the low frequency now. All right, so now we're going to be doing the test with the signal coming from the RCA out. So we've got a cable connected from the RCA. It's now connected to our scope, and it's connected to our multimeter, which also has a scope on it. And we've got our volume, obviously, as you can see, up and down. We've left the signal exactly in the middle, not favoring any channels, nothing. Just to confirm, there's no time delays, there's no crossovers introduced, and the equalizer is completely flat, okay? So we're all good to go. Something interesting about this unit, which I didn't mention before I continue, is that you also have a feature to switch off the remote out. So if you want to disable the remote out, you can actually go into the menu and you can disable and turn on the remote out, which is quite a nice thing to have, because a lot of instances you may not need that feature, but you don't want that wire to be present, or you might want to control something. There's something else that I found in here which slips my mind, but I'll go back to it in a minute, which was very interesting. Besides the fact that you've got a subwoofer control, which is really good, so you can control the level of gain. Again, it's something that if you set the level of the amplifier to where it should be, that's fine. You could turn that up completely. Now, bearing in mind, this feature would not be available from the speaker leads. It's only available from the RCA leads. So if you did not use these RCA leads and you use the speaker leads, again, you would not have this feature, because so if you had a woofer wired to it, you'd have to have another control mounted to the dashboard, which would then control the subwoofer app. Now we do make 5-channel amps that have that, but if you're using a 4-channel amp and perhaps you were using the head unit to power the back speakers and you were trying to amplify the front speakers with half of that amp and the subwoofer with the rear, you would have that problem. You may also want to run, you could run an active sub which has a built-in amplifier, and you could then connect this to that active sub, and then you could run the front and rear of that 4-channel amp. Again, more reasons behind why having a good line out voltage is absolutely imperative. Now, if you happen to own a head unit that didn't have it, fortunately, we also distribute a product known as Audio Control, which has a thing called Matrix, which I did another video on. I'll leave the link in the description below. And that's the Matrix line driver, which can produce incredible voltage, 6 channels in, 6 channels out, and you can boost from the source your signal, so you can end up getting a proper clean signal without distortion, so you get the best of both. So let's just have a look with no further ado. I'm now going to turn up the, we haven't connected it to the sub, we're connected to a normal front channel. I'm going to turn up the voltage, the output rather, to full power. And as you can tell, we've now got 7.91 volts, 7.92, and that is pretty close to an 8.8 volts. So I'm going to call it a 0.8 volts just for a round number, which is very good. So in total, all the individual channels, so you've got 6 line outs. You've got a sub, pair, you've got a front and a rear. So each channel is producing 0.8 of a volt, which if you add that up, people might say we have a 5-volt source unit, or closer to a 6-volt source unit, 5 point some change. And then of course, most importantly, the oscilloscope, my apologies, absolutely clean. And you'll see when I turn this up and down, the voltage is getting smaller and bigger, okay? And we've got a perfectly clean response curve, sine wave curve, sine wave response, which has got no clipping at all. RTA earlier showed you clean pink noise. We've now got a clean audio signal, and we've now got decent voltage. So we've got the 3 best things we need to create a good audio signal. Decent voltage, no clipped signals, and we've got full response pink noise. And that is what you need from any source unit. If you're missing one of those 3, everything else means nothing. All of those features, the DSP functions, the crossovers, the phenomenal GUI, the auto Android, and all these things are absolutely meaningless, because you've purchased this thing to produce sound. And if it can't do that, we have a problem. Okay, so now we're going to do the test again, as we did with the speaker leads. We'll do a 40 hertz test, which, as I said earlier, is the frequency that's used for measuring the bandwidth of low frequency. Obviously, pink noise, as I said, that tells us that we've got a flat response. So just to make sure that we are on the same page. So if I turn up the 40 hertz to full, as you can tell on the oscilloscope over there, it is 100% clean. And over here, you'll be able to see that it is 40 hertz, 39 point there. It's just got to 39.99. It's so close. And that's producing virtually 7.7 volts. So it's a hell of a lot of voltage for a low frequency response. I'll be interested to see if we put it onto the subwoofer out, how much power we get. So let's take this wire, and now we're going onto the subwoofer out, and let's turn it up. Okay, so we'll go to the subwoofer volume, we'll max this out and see what it does. I've not tried this, but I'm interested to see. And at full volume, let's just turn up the volume on the head unit as well. Okay, we've got, is that reading right? Can't be. 127 volts, no ways. Okay, so why aren't we getting, oh, I know why. Almost got caught by that. We got the crossover in here, 25 hertz, okay? So if I move it on, so we got a crossover, now we moved it into 250. If I bring this down to the level that I want, I've got 0.9, I've got the voltage on the head unit turned up full. I mean the output power, which is essentially AC voltage is what I'm referring to. I'm now going to find the sweet spot on the subwoofer level. There you go. If I leave that sub level to where it is, and I turn up the head unit full, you can see it's nice and clean there. It's on 6, almost 7, and I've got a decent voltage, 0.772. So, you know, again, having subwoofer controls is great, but you've got to have this preset for the person, so you can adjust it, and then once you're out of this menu, which is quite nice because the way this head unit's been set up is that those are not in your main GUI, they're kind of in a second layer, which is probably a good idea because people would fiddle with it. I'm not a fan personally of having, but all of them have it. They all have all the controls on the front GUI. We're going to try and change this going down the line, but most importantly, I think the message from this video is that you've got a clean RCA output of decent voltage, 100% linearity on pink noise, and yeah, you can see just turning up the volume full, it's perfect. And you've got the front and rear fadeability plus a separate sub-level control, which, you know, like I said, on the speaker leads you won't have, which is fantastic. And I mean, the price points are great, the quality is good, and it's got automotive distributors backup, which has been renowned for the last, well, since 1991. Yeah, I don't know what else there is to talk about on this head unit that I may have forgotten, but yeah, there's your DSP settings, which we're at. Going back to your main menu, we've got obviously a lot of steering wheel controls you can set up as well. So you can actually preset this to suit your vehicle to whatever you want. If you want it to be voice or mode or whichever, so you can obviously function that. You've also got your functionality in terms of your looks, your color, so you can change your display. You've also got quite a cool feature where you can also have this connected so that your headlights, when you turn them on and off, will control illumination, or it would be independent. You've got two camera inputs, so you can run front and rear cameras, which is great as well. You've also got the mic functionality, so which means you can also set this thing up. You can talk to it in Android mode, so you can tell it, you know, you can set up the microphones, and you can, just like your normal phone does, you can send it instructions on what to do. Naturally, your weather map, so all the typical things that you would find on an Android unit. So they're all there, just like you would expect anything else. Your Wi-Fi, also you can hotspot from your phone to Wi-Fi, so you can update firmware, and also you can stream stuff. You can watch YouTube and do whatever. Your displays, you can change your resolution. Very good display, I must say. I mean, you know, the reflection elements are typically a problem in cars. You get a lot of features for that, which is quite nice. Obviously, your voice, you can set up whichever voice selection you want for, you know, mapping or Google, so you can preset those, and then it'll just enable you to talk to this thing through the microphone that I've mentioned earlier, and you can obviously tell it, you know, without touching the screen whilst driving. Yeah, there's your system backend, your upgrade features, factory settings. You don't want to mess with that unless you want to brick it, and then you'd have a problem. So yeah, that's pretty much a wrap. It's a really inclusive, well-designed unit. Like I said to you, we've got them compatible with any make of car, pretty much any make of car. So right now, this is the one that's popular, obviously the 9-inch, but we can provide you trims for just about any vehicle. So all you got to do is inquire through automotive distributors, amd.co.za, or otherwise you can email us at reception.co.za. We'll be putting it up on our website soon, and you'll be learning more about smart multimedia brought to you by automotive distributors. You guys have a great day. I hope that was informative, and peace out. Got a phone hooked up to it. It pairs up straight away wirelessly. As you can tell, there's no cables connected to this. And yeah, the GUI is incredibly responsive. I can now obviously view the WhatsApp messages quite easily. I can go back into navigation, and I can try and just see what happens. I'll hold this down. Please navigate to Durban. Instantly done. That's so quick. I mean, that is what you expect. And that is pretty incredible, because a lot of these things are delayed, especially with the wireless CarPlay ones. By the time you've spoken, it still like thinks about it. I mean, this is just giving me immediate response, which is really, really cool. Obviously, if I get into the phone menu, I can dial numbers. There's the contacts. I can go into the WhatsApp. I can go into contacts again, back to the GUI. I can push this. That'll now give me other menus on the side. If I had Apple Music playing, it'll be up on the left here. Obviously, this is Global Newsroom, which is what's currently set up on this thing. So you got a lot of features. And then, of course, you got your other apps, which you can go into your messaging, naturally your reminders. Hey, if you're driving along, you want to get a reminder, you can actually get into your smart life features like lights at home or garage doors or things like that. And then, of course, your settings, which you can obviously go into them if you want 2-line messages or 1-line messages. Your weather. What's nice about it, as you go through the last item, so that you can actually make this bigger. So the last item that you are on will stay onto this as your preferred menu that you've been on. But you can add more items on there. The ones that are defaulted are obviously your microphone. I mean, here's Smart Things, which is great. Smart Things is a good feature. You can control a lot of automated apps that you can run through a lot of home automation devices, all from this device, which is very cool. So there you have it. Auto Android. CarPlay is exactly the same. Naturally, if you were to plug it in through a cable, it's even faster. But hey, who wants to do that when you can do it wirelessly and it can stay in your pocket, control your phone so seamlessly with a smart multimedia distributed by automotive distributors. The most important thing, like I said, is it's got great sound quality, flat response curve, no distortion, decent line outs, subwoofer and front and rear capabilities, which a lot of people don't realize is the most important thing, to have good sound quality. So you can enjoy your journey, and put smiles on your face whilst you're turning up and cranking up the sound. Take care, have a good one.